Ikki was an ugly, poor child outcast from his family for being born without any magical talent. He endured abuse until he finally escaped his miserable home. But before he knew it, he was lost in the middle of a deadly blizzard and began preparing to die from hypothermia, frustrated that this would be the end of his pathetic life. In his final moments, however, a legendary samurai awakened a godlike ability capable of destroying mankind, but hid his overwhelming power from his family. To avoid being expelled, Ikki must win the Seven Stars Festival, the greatest tournament where blazers fight to the death. After a long training session, Ikki headed back to his room, where his plot armor. Before she could scream at him, he was glad to have been wearing white pants. Instead of apologizing, he decided to become the greatest Jigachad in all of anime, and took off his shirt to make it even worse. Inside the director's office, the principal told him his actions might land their countries in war because the girl he saw was Stella Vermillion, the princess of the Vermillion nation. When she told him to apologize, Ikki turned toward Stella, saying her worthless, disgusting body wasn't even worth an apology. In that instant, Stella was about to burn him to ashes, but as she got closer, Ikki realized he was playing with his life. He screamed that she was just too cold Sundara, but Ikki wondered why her worthless face was in his room in the first place. Before she could burn him again, the principal returned, saying they were actually going to be roommates starting today. Back at their dorm, Stella screamed that she would never live with an ugly, useless failure like him. But the director reminded them that they should resolve their issues like honorable knights through a duel. That wasn't enough for Stella, so she declared that the loser of the match would become a servant. Along the way, Stella kept hearing about how Ikki was the only one in the academy with 0 ability points. When she arrived at the duel, especially after failing the previous year. In that moment, the arena turned green as Ikki summoned his sword, while Stella summoned her flaming leviathan. As soon as the match began, Stella rushed to strike him down, but Ikki evaded her attack before being burnt alive. As she adjusted her footwork and slashed toward him, he kept parrying and evading. No matter how many attacks she launched, Ikki deflected all of them. He told Stella he could tell how hard she'd worked to perfect her talent. Though shocked by he was immune to his sword, she admitted it was because of her talents that she'd be able to win this match. As Ikki despaired how Ikki was considered an F rank, the director revealed it was all because of his evil family. After he was admitted to the school, they rigged the blazer system to be based solely on magical ability rather than physical skill, forcing Ikki to fail every single one of his classes. As the sun set, Stella went back to Ikki's room, trapped her on top of him. Before her eyes, she saw his Jigachad muscular abs and tried restraining herself from touching his disgusting body. But she remembered how he saw her earlier and decided to keep feeling him to get even. With a single touch, Stella nearly climaxed on top of him. After putting a band-aid on her wound, Stella apologized for judging him without getting to know him and admitted her defeat. However, Ikki wondered when she'd start obeying him as his servant and reminded her it would be a shame on the royal family if their princess couldn't keep her word. She got up angrily, saying she would do any lowly things he wanted. For her first order, Ikki asked her to become his roommate. When he saw her blushing, he offered to try and change rooms, but she told him she wanted to become his roommate, though insisted it wasn't because she liked his ugly-ass weeb face or anything. She extended her fist for a bump, and so began their friendship. The following day on campus, Ikki heard the voice of his little sister, Shizuku. As she got closer, she told him it had been a long time, pushing him down and kissing him in front of everyone. Stella had no idea she transferred there, but Shizuku said that because she was separated from her brother for 4 years, even sleeping with him wouldn't be enough. Everyone screamed. As Stella pulled her away and yelled at Ikki to clear his worthless head, Shizuku started laughing and summoned her sword, saying she'd put out Stella's flames with her water abilities. Stella summoned her sword in the middle of the hallway and told her sword was smaller than her flatboard chest. Shizuku countered that her cannons looked fatter than disgusting cow udders. In that instant, both rushed toward one another and completely destroyed the building. A few hours later, the director punished them by having them clean every single toilet in the school. As they kept cleaning, Stella called Shizuku a washboard flat pillow while Shizuku called her a blow-up doll. Before finishing for the day, Shizuku told Stella to stay out of their family business because she'd never understand how her brother was treated as if he didn't exist his entire life. After letting those words out, she walked away. When she arrived at her dorm, she met a trap named Alice in her room. Meanwhile, Stella wondered what Shizuka was talking about. When Ikki arrived, she asked if he was ever treated like he didn't exist. After spitting out his drink, he decided to tell her the truth about his life. Together they walked through campus, and Ikki asked if she knew Samurai Roma. When she said she did, she realized his last name was Kugan, the same as Ikki's. After she realized the truth, Ikki explained that Roma was his grandfather. For generations, their family produced the greatest blazers, but Ikki was born without magical talent, so his family treated him like he didn't exist. After all the abuse he received, on New Year's Eve he tried to escape the miserable life he'd been living, but when the blizzard worsened, he became lost in the wilderness of the fog. Frustration filled his thoughts, but that's when his grandfather appeared, telling him the words he would never forget. Though they were just words, they saved him. Because no one could teach him anything, he began training alone for the rest of his life, just like Stella did while growing up. Still, his family couldn't accept a failure like him becoming a knight, so they forced the previous director to instate the ability point requirement just so he wouldn't be able to graduate. Later that day, Stella was cooking but realized Ikki was showering, so she decided to come in out of nowhere. The following morning, Ikki and Stella battled against one another. After evading and deflecting each other's attacks, their session was over, and Stella had already received a notification about her first battle. When Ikki wondered why he woke up blacked out in the shower with shampoo next to him, Stella pretended to have no idea what he was talking about. As the bells rang, Ikki began walking away, but Stella knew she couldn't let this opportunity go. When Sunday finally arrived, Stella decided to follow Ikki to his date. When Shizuku told her to read the room, Stella fired back that she was the one who wanted to get a room with her brother. Meanwhile, Alice introduced himself to Ikki, but Ikki knew this day would be longer than the sword he was hiding. As they started shopping, the security room began getting raided, and a group of mysterious bandits began entering the mall. Inside the bathroom, Alice began hearing footsteps, so he shut Ikki's mouth. From outside, a bandit barged through the door and unleashed his entire magazine. After they left, however, Alice brought them back from his shadow dimension, and Ikki realized the girls were going to be in danger. Alice summoned his small sword and ripped a hole in space-time to allow them to sneak around. When they located the dead security guards, Ikki requested permission from the director to use their device. She sent him the approval but warned him the bandits were after something other than money. In the middle of the hostage pack, Shizuku told Stella she had a plan as long as they could stay undercover for a short while. But as soon as one of the bandits kicked a woman to the side, her child threw his ice cream at the man and attempted to defend his mother. The bandit kicked him aside and was ready to teach him a lesson, but Stella blew her cover and launched her fire dragon toward the bullets, vaporizing them. Soldiers began firing at her, but none of the bullets caused any damage. Just then, the leader of the bandits appeared, saying it was an honor to meet the Vermillion princess, and introduced himself as Bishu. After that, as he pointed his gun at the mother and threatened to execute her, Stella dashed forward and summoned her sword, but this was all part of his plan to lure her out. In that instant, the man activated his judgment ring and began absorbing Stella's powers, striking her back with the same power she was releasing. With those powers, the leader knew Stella was worthless but decided to give her a chance to save the mother's life. In exchange, he wanted her to strip in front of them and bow down. As Ikki was about to step in, Alice held him back. Stella began removing her plot armor, but the leader told her she still had her greatest asset to be removed. As she struggled to take it off, Ikki was unable to resist rushing in, but Alice activated his ability to freeze Ikki in space, telling him to have some more trust in his sister. As soon as she finished the magical circle, Shizuku released her water wall, creating a dome that would protect the hostages from bullets. As soon as she was done, Ikki summoned in Tetsu and leaped off the railing as bullets flew past him. In that moment, Ikki sacrificed his ability to see color and used his visual resources to analyze the bandits' abilities faster. Once he realized he should neutralize his left hand, he leaped off the railing to avoid the bullets and began running across the side guards. As he closed the distance, Ikki leaped toward the man and slashed him in an instant, telling him he couldn't activate his ability on a person he couldn't see. When the bandit attempted to attack, Alice bound him in place, and Stella neutralized the rest of his friends. One of the soldiers hiding among the hostages threatened to eliminate a woman from the shadows. A man's voice emanated, and beams of light appeared to kill the soldier along with the woman. When Stella wondered where the arrows came from, the man dispelled his camouflage to appear from the darkness, and Ikki instantly recognized him as Carrara. Outside the building, all the girls flocked to Carrara for saving them, but Ikki decided to come and thank him. Carrara told him it was his job to help the weak and asked Ikki if he would continue being a knight with his pathetic abilities. When Stella screamed that Ikki was stronger than him, Carrara laughed hysterically, telling her that Ikki was a worthless coward who ran away from him during their last battle. Just then, Ikki's phone went off, and he saw that Carrara was going to be his first opponent. Before leaving, Carrara told him not to run away this time, calling him the worst one. During the first day of the selection matches, Stella faced off against a knight wearing heavy armor. Before the battle could even begin, Stella warned him that his armor would be nothing but an annoyance against her flames, so the man forfeited immediately, and Stella won her first match. Back at his dorm, Ikki watched tapes of Carrara defeating his enemies but got jump-scared when he imagined being on the other side of his arrows. When Stella asked if he would be fine, he told her he'd definitely win blows without resisting. Because of that, he was able to stay at the school. After hearing his story, Alice realized Ikki was way too used to getting hurt, and as a friend, Alice hoped someone would one day appear and hear the faint screams of Ikki's soul. The day of Alice wished him luck. During the match signing, Ikki immediately agreed to the risks of the fight, but a girl appeared and was surprised by his bravery, as no one had ever accepted the risks without hesitation. Ikki knew just how dangerous the girl was, and when she realized he knew her identity, she teleported toward him, asking if he would like some private tutoring. Inside the waiting room, 30 minutes remained before the battle. Ikki attempted to concentrate and remember all the pain he'd felt throughout his journey, but without realizing it, all his traumatic experiences began flooding his mind. The time ticked down faster and faster until eventually Ikki woke up in a daze when his name was called for the match, wondering how 30 minutes had passed so quickly. When Ikki made it to the center, Carrara was shocked that the worst one actually showed up. With the field ready, Carrara summoned his bow, and when Ikki summoned in Tetsu, the match began. Carrara told Ikki to fix the ugly look on his face, and began fake playing a piano before summoning his area invisible. Though Ikki knew it was a disgusting ability, his quick reactions allowed him to see the arrows and parry them, even allowing him to get close enough to attack Carrara. As Carrara continued launching more arrows, Ikki closed the distance and drove him backward, but none of his attacks landed. Carrara told him not invisible this year. From behind, an arrow pierced his hand and dropped him to the ground. While Ikki remained shocked, Stella wondered why he had been fighting like an idiot, having given Carrara a lot of time at the start of the match before using his area invisible. Alice told her Ikki was unable to do something that easy. He was too nervous to even think straight. When Stella thought Ikki could never be nervous, she remembered how confident he had been about winning, realizing he wasn't the type to ever be confident about a match. As she remembered the kind of person he was, Carrara landed a shot that pierced through his vital point. As he lay on the ground, Carrara screamed for the crowd to encourage Ikki, causing for her encouragement. Carrara announced he fired his arrow. Ikki analyzed the order and direction of his wounds along with the depth and angle of his voice. Before it could pierce him, a wind gushed around Ikki. When the dust settled, Ikki had caught the arrow with his hand. Carrara was shocked that Ikki could see his arrows, but Ikki told him he knew everything about him. Because of that, he was able to parry every single arrows back at him. Even with his greatest arrow, Ikki slashed it in half. Though Ikki had intentionally missed Carrara's face by a single milling onto the floor. At the hospital that night, Ikki was glad to see Stella's face next to him. From inside the room, Stella began screaming because Ikki had seen her drooling face, but he told her not to worry. She should get used to having his warm liquid all over her mouth. As she began throwing everything at him, he apologized for making her worry, but she told him she wasn't actually worried. As she pulled away, Ikki asked if it meant she shared his feelings. When she nodded, he hugged her close up. He wanted to fight against her once more. Stella agreed she wouldn't lose again, and they made it a promise to each other. 2 weeks later, Stella was training alone while remembering the events of that day, but grew angry because they still hadn't done anything lovers do since then. During that time, Ikki had managed to win all of his 5 matches and had lost the name Worst One, instead being given the name Another One. The following day in class, Kagami wanted to learn how to become a better swordsman and asked him to teach her how to handle his sword. Stella was on the verge of burning the entire building down, but Ikki agreed anyway. Kagami began writing the headline of tomorrow's news, saying Ikki was going to teach girls how his sword would penetrate them. Just then, Yuri walked in but started vomiting blood right away. Back at their dorm, Stella tried asking him if they could do lover stuff, but realized he was already knocked out instead of listening to her ugly ass. The following morning, Ikki began teaching the girls how to balance to strengthen their core muscles. While Kagami was interviewing him, the group of worthless virgins ganged up on Ikki and summoned their devices. One of them even pointed his gun at him, but when they rushed forward, Ikki deflected all of their attacks and knocked them away. When their leader nearly fired his weapon, Ikki launched a pebble that stopped his gun from firing. As he walked up toward him, he clapped in his face. In that moment, the guy realized he was literally clapped. But when Ikki told them they were using their weapons against the rules, all of them bowed down to Ikki and apologized, saying they were just ugly, worthless virgins. Kagami thought they were disgusting simps, but Ikki decided to teach them as well, and all of them began practicing along with him. However, a bunch of ugly-ass girls, especially the glasses bitch in the back, wanted Ikki to teach them how to get stronger. When Stella asked if he could teach her, Ikki tried refusing, so she thought he didn't want to spend any time with her and started running away. As she sulked across campus, Alice asked if Shizuku had defeated her once more and told her to play the dating sim he found to make her feel better. Throughout the night, Stella began playing the game. In this game, she could be honest about wanting to stay with him. She wished she could hold hands with Ikki, or even kiss him, or even play with his sword and try to prevent it from penetrating her body. However, Ikki stepped in at that moment. When Stella screamed at him to knock first, he told her they would be going to the pool for training and asked if she wanted to join. Those words confused Stella as she screamed that he wouldn't be training her anyway, but Ikki decided to explain the reason he refused to train her. The following day on the bus, Stella smiled while sitting next to Ikki, but Shizuku wondered what they could have done together the previous night. As she stared at Ikki, she remembered how he told her that she had already surpassed the level he could teach at. Because of that, he wanted her to always be the only one who surpassed his imagination. After hearing those words, she realized she was special to Ikki, and he was her lover after all. But Kagami found some juice. At the pool, Stella told Shizuku she could use her body as a surfboard, but Shizuku clapped back, saying she could use her blow-up doll body as a floaty. Meanwhile, the guys began crying tears of joy for following their master this far. In the distance, a mysterious girl stared toward them. Eventually, the training session began, and Ikki told everyone to dive into the water for training. Stella began bouncing her massive balls onto the bouncy ball until it slipped away and hit the mysterious girl. Later on, she wished to spend some time with Ikki and dove into the water as he was teaching the others. Kagami came, asking how far she had gone with Ikki. Outside the water, Stella began coughing from all the fluid she swallowed, but she said that a princess like her would never do anything like that. Those words made Kagami realize she could finally steal Ikki's hot body. Stella screamed that Ikki was her boyfriend and she couldn't do that, getting lured into Kagami's trap. Kagami promised to keep it a secret so their love could flourish, but began asking what they do every night and if he uses his sword on her. Poor Stella began blushing, saying she hadn't even kissed him yet. Kagami screamed at Stella to make the move already, but Stella was worried he would think she was a lowly girl. Kagami reminded her that men were worthless creatures who might run away if she was too slow. When Stella said she would never want that to happen, Kagami got up and ran off, telling her she'd call Ikki so she could talk with him. When the two were alone, Ikki wondered what she wanted to talk about, but she was too embarrassed and asked what he thought of her swimsuit. Ikki revealed he'd been meaning to talk to her and asked if it was okay for them to keep moving like this, making Stella cry because she realized his heart had escaped. As she started crying, she told him she agreed because their relationship hadn't been working out. When he tried to hold her, she slapped his hand away. She told him he was the one who was unsatisfied, but Ikki thought she was the one who hated him with the way she was acting. Stella told him she actually liked him, but Ikki told her he liked her even more. Stella wondered if that was why his sword had been sheathed for 2 weeks, but he told her he wouldn't want her to think he was a disgusting creep. After all, she was the one who hadn't made any moves on him. Stella told him she would never want to seem like a loose girl and get rejected, but Ikki told her it was the same for him. While screaming, Ikki asked why they were fighting, but Stella screamed back saying she had no idea. After they calmed down, Ikki asked her to confess what she truly wanted at the same time as him. Throughout the bus ride, they continued holding each other's hands. Just then, their phone notifications went off, alerting them that their next opponents would be from the student council. A mysterious girl smiled. The following week, Renan was sprinting across the field to build up her speed and break the sound barrier. Across the other field, Sue was spinning his blade as it accumulated weight, telling Stella there was no chance for her to deflect his attack. Sue launched his attack, while Rin rushed forward. Ikki held Stella back while Stella completely destroyed the man's sword, telling him she could take all of his abilities head-on. With Ikki's blade pointing toward Renan, both student council members were absolutely clapped. But the girl from the pool continued staring at them. After the matches, Shizuku asked Ikki if she could lick his wounds to make him feel better, but Stella couldn't reveal they were dating. Alice asked Ikki if they were going to keep ignoring the dumbass in the background. She fell down before running away and landing in the river. At the hospital, she apologized for hiding this entire time, but introduced herself as Ayatsuji AA. As soon as Ikki heard her last name, he realized she was the daughter of Ayatsuji Kaido. AA revealed he'd been hospitalized. Still, she was happy that someone like Ikki would know her father and wished for him to train her. The following day, Ikki decided to help her practice. As he dodged all of her attacks, he realized her foundation was strong but told her to stop in an instant before reaching his neck. AA stopped, and Ikki realized the source of her weakness was copying her father's style. The anatomical differences between a male and female destroyed the foundations of the technique. While Ikki knew how to fix the issue, he warned her that she would never be able to mimic her father's style again. However, AA asked him to teach her anyway, so she could become stronger. Ikki got her into a ready stance and began messing with her legs. All the girls were shocked, but Ikki continued attempting to adjust her legs and stroking her skin with his fingers. After a while of taking all of Ikki's strokes, she couldn't hold back and climaxed. But Ikki had managed to fix her stance. Once she calmed down, she felt a lot more stiff, but Ikki told her to try attacking. With a single motion, she was able to parry his attack and launch a strike toward his neck. She thought it was amazing how he was able to solve her lifelong problem so quickly, but Stella was jealous another girl was getting all over Ikki once again. Later that night, Ikki apologized for feeling up her body, but AA was grateful because he was just helping her. She loved the way he stroked her body with his large, massive hands. His manly, massive hands reminded her of her father's hands and how caring they were. Meanwhile, Stella asked Shizuku if this new girl was bothering her. Shizuku revealed that she was better than a certain cow who was always attempting to milk her brother. Later that night, Stella asked Ikki how it was feeling up AA's body. When Ikki didn't know what to say, Stella extended her hand, asking for his. He promised he was just helping AA improve, but Stella told him she still felt jealous. Ikki told her not to worry because he only loved her, and she went on her tiptoes. The following morning, AA was sparring against Stella, and Ikki watched as they played with his sword. Later that night, AA invited them for dinner, but Stella was downing plates like a fat ass, saying she had to eat this much or her body wouldn't move. Just then, a group of bandits appeared and approached AA, telling her it had been a long time since they'd seen each other. Ikki told them AA was feeling uneasy and asked them to leave. Their leader realized he was a swordsman and apologized for disturbing their meal, pouring a cup of wine for him. When Ikki went in for the drink, the man slammed the bottle on his head, telling him a swordsman doesn't let his guard down. While a worker tried calling the cops, one of the student council members stopped him. The leader of the bandits said he wanted to crush another swordsman. When Stella was about to burn him to cinders, Ikki tried calming her down, saying his hand just slipped a bit. All the bandits laughed at how pathetic and scared he was acting. Their leader got closer to spit on Ikki. Still, Ikki tried to calm Stella down, so their leader decided to leave before they kept disgracing themselves with a worthless one. When they were gone, Stella wondered why Ikki took the first blow on purpose. He revealed that he'd be expelled if he ever used his device and knew their leader looked way too strong to defeat without a sword. As they walked together at night, Stella wondered who those guys were. When she didn't answer, Ikki told her he'd always help her if she was in need, and Ikki's next match was none other than AA. At the bandit's base, Sword Eater felt something was off. A few days later, Stella noticed that AA had completely disappeared from their matches. Shizuku told her this should be better for her. A while later, Alice warned Ikki that there was no chance for AA to win against him. So because of that, he knew she would make a move the night before. After letting those words out, Ikki told him he was extremely sharp and showed him the message she sent, asking him to meet her at the top of a building at 3 a.m. That night, Ikki arrived at the top of the building where AA was waiting. As they stared at each other, AA knew the promise he made to Stella and asked him what he would do if he faced an undefeatable opponent. He told her he would still attempt to beat them in a fair fight, but AA told him she would defeat her enemy with any means and rip the gates open before falling down. When they got out, Ayatsuji realized he used his trump card, and Ikki finally understood that this was the trap she'd lured him into. After all, she knew he could only use his ability once a day, and since there were only 10 hours left until the match, this would give her the only chance to win. When Ikki wondered why she would cast aside the pride and honor of her sword style, she walked away, leaving him to collapse on the ground. A while later, Stella was dreaming about Ikki using his sword of the night and penetrating her defenses with his blade. As she was about to climax in her wet dream, Ikki's head landed on her chest. She wondered if he was about to make her dream come true in real life, but she noticed that Ikki was barely able to breathe. A few hours later, Ikki woke up in the hospital and worried he had missed his match, but there were still 4 hours left. Just then, the director walked in. At the sight of the destruction, Ikki confessed he was the reason for the building's damage. Inside her office, however, the director decided to let him know the truth. 2 years ago, AA's father, the last samurai, went to the hospital after being defeated in a duel. The swordsman he battled was Sword Eater. According to the agreement of their deal, Sword Eater became the owner of the dojo, and her father had been in a coma for the last 2 years. As AA looked at him, she remembered her father's words, but the way Sword Eater kicked her out like a worthless wretch fueled the anger inside her. Just then, her father said the words, "I'm sorry," but AA held his hand, telling him she'd get everything back. Outside the director's office, Ikki was still determined to fight AA head-on, but wanted to make sure of one last thing before the match. The match was finally about to begin, and Yuri was going to be one of the commentators, so blood was going to be spilled. The gates finally opened, and from inside, both Ikki and AA entered. While AA told Ikki she was shocked at how determined he was to win, he simply ignored her no matter what she said and summoned his sword. Once her sword was summoned, the match began. Ikki leaped forward for his opening attack, but before getting close, 5 slashes materialized on his body. When he landed, another slash injured his back. However, he managed to get back on his feet to parry her attack. After clashing with one another, Ikki bounced away, knowing she was likely activating traps she'd placed before the match. In AA's memories, she knew the locations of all the traps she had laid and told Ikki there was no place he could run to. AA was glad the commentators hadn't noticed. But as Ikki dodged her attack and was about to fall into her trap, he ducked away at the last moment. While he was in midair, a slash cut across Ikki's entire arm, making him realize he could die if her next attack landed on a vital spot. Just then, AA continued rushing against him, but Ikki narrowly managed to keep her away before slashing down. However, she apologized and cast a tornado to attack him. She saw that he had blocked her attack with the hilt of his sword. As she leaped back, Ikki told her that she was just the kind of person he expected. He remembered going to meet with Yuri before the match, telling her that AA was likely going to cheat. After spitting out her blood, Ikki asked Yuri to pretend as if she wasn't seeing anything. Even though Yuri told him he would automatically win if AA cheated, Ikki wanted to believe that AA was different inside her heart. During their match, Ikki noticed that all of her movements were off and that she'd neglected everything he'd taught her. Because of that, Ikki said there was only one thing he could do. With all of his strength, he would bring back her pride. In that moment, he began rushing forward. Even as AA used her traps, Ikki's perfect vision allowed him to dodge all of her attacks. AA unleashed all of her traps at once. But Ikki still pierced through the clouds, and as she tried slashing him, he vanished before her eyes. As she struggled to get up, she wondered why she was weak again and began crying. However, Ikki told her that her soul wasn't in this fight, revealing that she'd been deceiving herself this entire time. But Ikki told her that he still wanted to help her get back what was stolen. As she wondered how he could still aid someone who betrayed him, Ikki told her he didn't need a reason to help his friends. He extended his hand to her. She realized Ikki was the same type of man her father was, so she reached her hand out, asking Ikki to help her. The following day, Ikki went with AA to her stolen dojo, where she began telling him the events that occurred on that day. During an awful storm, Sword Eater had managed to completely deflect all of the last samurai's attacks. When he shoved him away, AA's father told them he could never forget. Ever since that day, AA had sworn to defeat that man. Eventually, they arrived at her dojo, where the bandits had trashed it. A few moments later, Ikki arrived in his room along with the girls and challenged Sword Eater to a duel, saying he would be stepping in for AA to get back her dojo. Qualified. Realizing he had completely destroyed all of his lackeys, Sword Eater summoned Orochimaru and was nearly killed by his own summoning, but managed to tame it in the end. At the same time, Ikki summoned Tetsu from his hands. He slashed down toward Ikki but changed the direction of his slash in the last instant, nearly killing him. After that last attack landed, Ikki had finally understood the true essence of his power, explaining that it was his reaction speed that Sword Eater's reactions were faster than 0.05 seconds. He began launching attacks from two directions at once. Although he thought it was over, Ikki used his irregular guard to defend his attacks, buying him some time to move back. But Sword Eater began speeding up once again, launching quadruple attacks. Ikki realized he wouldn't be able to block all of them. Before he knew it, his foot tripped against a platform, but that saved his life from the nearly fatal attack Sword Eater was about to land. This was the tournament-level ability, and Sword Eater promised he would end him now. As more slashes continued appearing on his body, Ikki's face began smiling. As AA looked at him from a distance, she could see the way he was barely fighting back, reminding her of the time her father lost. But as she was about to step in, Stella held her back, telling her that as much as she'd also want to stop him, she couldn't be the one to prevent him from the enjoyment he was having.
Just then, Aya realized he was smiling, and Stella revealed that Ikki's greatest joy was attempting to defeat a strong person standing in front of him, no matter how awful the odds were. After Stella said those words, Aya realized that on that day, her father said, "I'm sorry," as he cast his vision towards Sword Eater, apologizing to him for being in such a sorry state. Breathing heavily, Ikki was glad to finally find an overwhelming opponent, wishing this would never end. When the dust settled, blood fell onto the floor, and Aya realized it was the same last secret technique, Teni Mao, the essence of the Ayasuji style. When she wondered how she had learned the technique from their matches, Stella told her it was blade steel and thought his back was worth following. But Ikki knew that Stella's back was the only one he wanted to be clapping. After his sword vanished, Sword Eater asked for his name. After Ikki introduced himself, Sword Eater began walking away, telling Ikki they'd continue this battle in the 7 Stars tournament. A few days later, Ayasuji told the selection committee about her cheating and was removed from the selection matches, but just then they got a message from her telling them that her father had regained consciousness. With the case finally closed, Stella years. Throughout the following weeks, Ikki continued dominating his matches. By the 12th match, he had solidified the name Another One. Later that day, Stella's massive cannons and Ikki were on their way for a vacation paid by their director for all their victories. Neither of them noticed the sly smile she was hiding. Stella was excited to have their first premarital night, and Ikki knew something was going to be long, and it was definitely not his time in bed. While they were going on their trip, Shizuku had also been boarding the bus to meet with her parents. As they were walking, Stella sneezed and was feeling a bit cold, so Ikki decided to take off his jacket for her. She was glad they were behaving like actual lovers. In the distance, however, Ikki noticed the silhouette of a few people, and as soon as he realized they were screwed, Stella was cleaning the floors for the student council house. The vice president revealed that this would be the training site for the tournament representative. However, Stella realized she wasn't going to be able to develop plot like she wanted. Meanwhile, Shizuku's father had finally made it back to her parents' mansion. This was so crazy that she even named her cat after Ikki. Once they were done cleaning, Stella told them they were going to see a waterfall for the first time, but Renan said that Ikki's sword already got to experience her waterfall every night. Before leaving, Ikki noticed Stella was already burning up, but she pretended she was fine and started walking away. While climbing up the mountain, Ikki turned around and noticed Stella was about to collapse, but she continued pretending like she was fine. Ikki knew her fat ass wasn't fine because she only ate 2 full bowls of rice compared to the usual 7. Even so, she screamed that she didn't want to go back because this would finally be their opportunity to be alone together. Meanwhile, Shizuku's father asked to meet with her inside the mansion. A little while later, the weather was beginning to get worse, and Ikki realized Stella was really not feeling well. When she confessed she'd been feeling dizzy, she realized the kiss from the other day might have made her pregnant. Ikki was about to run away from child support, but told her she was probably just having a cold. But for Stella, being a princess, she'd never had a cold before. She began breathing heavily as rain started falling. Ikki carried her up, but among the trees, someone had been spying on them. Eventually, they made it to an abandoned log cabin. Ikki tried warming her up, but felt her forehead and realized she had a high fever. Seeing how soaked and wet she was, he told her to take her clothes off. Too embarrassed to move, Ikki decided to also take his clothes off and strip down in front of her. She laughed to herself. Even so, Stella knew the truth and was glad because it meant he was excited by her. In that instant, Ikki realized he would finally become a man. When he asked Stella if she knew what she wanted to do, she told him she did. After fumbling the greatest bag in all of anime, Ikki told her he wished to proudly announce she was his lover one day, but if their relationship went there at this point, he would never be able to show his face to either of their families. Stella knew it was proof he was taking their relationship seriously and thanked him. Just then, Ikki's phone began ringing. When he was gone to answer, Stella realized she would have allowed Ikki to do anything he wanted. Outside the cabin, the spy informed a mysteriously ugly, disgusting fatso straight out of the ugly bastard genre about their location. He was glad to finally get started. Back at the mansion, Shizuku met with her father. When he tried talking to her, she told him she wanted to go back to her room instead of spending any time talking to him. Her father wanted to know how his daughter was doing while living away, and was proud of her for winning all 12 matches. Those words only angered her as she wondered why he wasn't proud of her brother who was also winning all 12 matches, and ran off before closing the door. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Ikki heard multiple earthquakes outside. While investigating the source, he saw a giant golem ready to crush their home. In an instant, he rushed to save Stella after activating his ability and managed to bring her to safety. After putting her down, he summoned Intetsu to destroy the golem with his first secret technique, but the golem regenerated into multiple smaller ones. No matter how many he slashed, they continued regenerating and defeating him. When Stella screamed his name, the golems began rushing toward her. Just then, Renan rushed from above to destroy all the golems and save Stella, and Sue came to destroy the golems threatening Ikki. Although they continued fighting, Ikki knew there was a wire blazer controlling them from far away. Both Sue and Renan had already been subdued. As he wondered what they could do, Toa told them she could always trace back to their thread. She activated her powers, rushing forward and destroying all the golems without even drawing her sword. As Ikki stared at her, he realized this was what the top knight in Hagu Natatomi was like, the 4th placeholder in the 7 Stars Festival. A second later, Shizuku's phone got a notification, shocking her in her place. She smiled as she saw that her opponent was Toa herself. The following day, Stella wondered how Shizuku would defeat Toa when water gets electrolyzed by lightning, but Alice reminded her that Shizuku's water was super pure, so lightning couldn't conduct through it. Still, Ikki wanted his sister to be safe. The day of the match finally arrived. When both stepped onto the stage, Shizuku immediately summoned her water sword, and when Toa summoned hers, the match began. They looked down toward one another in a stalemate. En explained that they were both waiting for the other to move, as a single mistake could result in death. After staring at one another for a few more minutes, Shizuku made the first move to summon her water field, but Toa was able to parry all her attacks while launching her own ranged blows. Shizuku created a water wall with streams to fight her down, but Toa evaded all the attacks and continued trying to penetrate her wall. No matter how much water Shizuku created, Toa had already realized she would run out of energy soon, so she began closing the distance. Shizuku managed to freeze her in place and sent a giant icicle to crush her down. Still, Toa was able to break through the ice with a single blow. As she wondered if Toa had been seeing something else, Toa suddenly flashed toward her to close the distance. Shizuku barely dodged the attack, but as they faced off, Toa teleported forward once more, slashing her down. However, it was a water clone of Shizuku, and she had narrowly avoided losing. They stared against one another, but Toa vanished toward her. As Shizuku continued attempting to evade the attacks, En had completely disappeared from the commentary booth. Toa's attacks continued, driving Shizuku back. After asking why Shizuku had been reacting so slowly, Ikki explained that she couldn't see any of Toa's attacks, an ability one of the teachers had used on him. Just then, En congratulated him on being so intelligent, explaining it was called Nashi, an old martial arts technique that allowed a person to breathe correctly and teleport to develop all the plot they wanted. She explained that human brains would overheat if they analyzed every single detail, so Nashi allowed the user to bury themselves inside the opponent's subconscious until their lives were at risk. Because of that ability, there was no chance for Shizuku to win anymore. But Ikki was confident Shizuku had an ace up her sleeve. After hearing those words, Stella began screaming for Shizuku to do her best. Shizuku was disgusted hearing a cow encouraging her to move forward, but even so, hearing that ugly, disgusting cow's voice reminded her that she couldn't let Stella reach the top with her brother. She summoned her water to heal all her wounds and determined to prove her love. Although she still hadn't found a way to win, she was now inspired. As soon as Toa rushed forward, Shizuku launched her water bolts and parried her attacks before summoning more icicle streams toward Toa. Toa continued evading all her attacks and launching her own lightning to deflect her blows. Her hands were frozen as she fell down, but Shizuku cast pillars of ice to deflect the purple lightning coming toward her. As soon as she closed the distance to slosh Shizuku down, it was nothing but a water clone again. Several of her clones began rushing forward. Once she slashed them, she had fallen for the trap. All the bodies disintegrated into a blinding mist. From all around the fog, Shizuku was able to fly and constantly conceal her main body while the shadow clones attacked. As soon as those words were heard, Shizuku dropped her sword and fell unconscious, losing her 13th match as the field sparkled. Alice wondered if Ikki still wanted his sister not to push herself that hard, but Ikki saw everything. Her last attack wasn't a worthless, reckless attack, but the only chance for her to win, yet Toa still cut it down. Later that night, everyone waited for Shizuku to wake up. When she regained consciousness, she asked them to leave her alone since she was exhausted. Once they were gone, Stella wondered if Shizuku would be okay, but Ikki was confident she'd grown strong. Inside her room, she wondered why Alice stayed back. When she tried screaming at him, he hugged her close, telling her she'd worked hard and that her brother watched her till the end. To Alice, she was the only person she didn't need to fight or protect. He told her she didn't need to act tough around him. After hearing those words, Shizuku finally cried all the pain that was hiding in her heart. On the other side of town, her father received the news that she'd lost and told the ugly, disgusting Fatso to do as he wished now. A few days later, Stella had finally won her 14th match. While walking through the sunset, Stella wondered if she'd started becoming stronger after all the tormenting Ikki had been putting her body through. Ikki wondered if she knew what she just said, but she laughed it off and asked him if he remembered the promise they made to each other. Ikki could never forget, telling her he'd win all his matches to make it to the top one day. As they kissed, some disgusting creep took a photo of them and smiled to himself. The following week, the director wondered if Ikki knew a disgusting fatso named Aza. When Ikki told her he was part of the Kugan family and was working under his father, she told him to be careful on campus. Later that day, the student council called for Ikki and Stella. As soon as they entered the door, Toa fell into the most convenient position possible and began screaming at the rest of them to clean up the room. However, she realized her guests had finally arrived. Stella told her her skirt wasn't doing its job and realized Toa was very different from the type of person she imagined. At the orphanage Toa grew up in, all the kids were excited to see her again. One of the kids realized he'd seen Stella's useless face on TV before, so they ran over to play with her. Throughout the rest of the day, Stella and the student council members played with the kids while Ikki and Toa prepared food for them. Ikki was glad his sister got to fight against Toa, but when Misogi told him she had actually forced Toa to take her glasses off, Ikki had already realized her ability. The worse her eyesight was, the better her noble art performed. After all, human brains are like computer chips. All their actions are controlled by weak electric surges, so as a lightning user, she is able to see those circuits and understand her opponent's state of mind, knowing every single trap and skill they were hiding. Ikki wondered why he couldn't take his eyes off Toa, but Misogi revealed this was the true essence of her style. When they lived inside the institution, there was a kid who was constantly violent beyond help and kept harming Toa, but she never abandoned him once, and he began slowly feeling like a human. The one thing she always remembered was all the love she received from her family. She had become the courage of the orphanage. As they all ate their food, Ikki saw that her powers were for the sake of others rather than herself, but while they drove home, he wondered what the source of his own power was. As soon as they arrived back, Shizuku and the others ran to show him the newspaper. They were on the first page with the headline of them committing an indecent scandal. Just then, Aza showed up, telling Ikki there was an official call from the Morals Committee for him to have a hearing. When Stella's scream got him to piss off with his ugly, disgusting big nose, Ikki told her it would be fine and got in the car. What he didn't know, however, was how awful the following few weeks were going to be, as the city itself lost all color. On June 28th, Ikki was imprisoned. On June 29th, Ikki had his first hearing, where Aza asked when he'd started seeing Stella, and one of them asked if he thought it was indecent to have a relationship with a princess. Ikki told them they hadn't done anything. Although Aza tried shutting him up, Ikki apologized but went on to make something very clear. He said he truly loved Stella, and she truly loved him. On June 30th, they locked Ikki in solitary confinement, where he struggled to think of what to do. Meanwhile, Stella had won her next match, and everyone was talking about how disgusting she was. She struggled to sleep all those lonely nights. On the fourth day of his imprisonment, Aza led Ikki to have his selection match inside the compound, even though he had barely eaten anything. The official for the match was Yuri, and Aza began the match. On July 2nd, the news was filled with propaganda to paint Ikki as a merciless killer. Stella wondered if it was her fault and if it might have been better for them not to be together. Those words made Shizuku attack her in public, telling her that Ikki was going along with all of this only so he could keep their relationship. That's how important it was to him. After remembering how he wanted to protect their relationship, Shizuku called her pathetic for ever thinking of leaving Ikki. It was then that she realized Ikki was doing all this for her. On July 3rd, she cut a strand of her hair. On his 8th day of imprisonment, Ikki won another match, making it his 16th victory. As he collapsed, Yuri caught him and began vomiting blood to distract the guards, sliding something into his clothes before leaving. Inside his solitary confinement, Ikki looked at what she had left, seeing it was a strand of Stella's hair, reigniting him and making him realize that Stella was keeping their promise. That day, Ikki asked to meet with his father, the head of this branch, to appeal his innocence. Although Aza thought he was a complete idiot, the director granted him approval and Ikki went to meet with his father. When he went to see him, his father was impressed that Ikki had been winning all his matches against tough opponents. In that moment, Ikki realized this entire time he'd been fighting for the day his father would recognize him. After letting those words out, his father told him he was gravely mistaken because he'd always acknowledged him. However, he went on to say teaching skill to someone without talent was worse than useless because it allowed a mediocre man to achieve worthless, mediocre results. Those words crushed Ikki. His father said that when someone achieved something beyond their means, it bred hope in useless citizens and created unnecessary discord in society. On his 11th day of imprisonment, Ikki won his duel, but his soul was beginning to leave his body. Having his father acknowledge him, that small, pathetic goal was now gone. After winning his 19th victory, the final match was about to be held soon. The director told his sister she had bad news. At the same time, Aza revealed Ikki's next opponent, none other than Toa. If he won the final match, it would be more than enough to prove his qualification and end the questioning. Later that night in Toa's room, Shizuku appeared after she had called for her. She had known the selection was rigged, so she asked Toa to convince Ikki to withdraw. When she was home, Shizuku told Alice she had no idea what to do. Meanwhile, Stella was taking her anger out in the rain, and Ikki was completely wiped out. The day of the final matches arrived. Only the 6 winners would qualify to enter the Seven Swords Festival. Among them were the vice president, Alice, Stella, and Ikki. His match was going to be televised, but En had already abandoned her job. As she stared at the helicopters, she realized they were trying to publicly humiliate Ikki, but just then, an ugly old geezer appeared, the god of war himself, saying he wasn't there only to watch Toa, but to see the son of Kugan fight as well. Azza appeared saying the match might get interrupted today. The announcer revealed Ikki hadn't arrived, so the match would be forfeited if he didn't show up in 15 minutes. The director wondered what happened to their promise of having Ikki escorted, but Azza claimed Ikki had already left by himself, though he was sure he'd be fine as long as he didn't collapse halfway through. As Ikki struggled to run, he remembered his grandfather's words, telling him that his frustration was proof he hadn't given up on himself. But in the cold, dreary snow, his alter ego wondered if those were just worthless words given to a useless kid to achieve something beyond his means. After all, those words had given Ikki nothing but pain and solitude, and his own technique was nothing but a series of cheap stolen styles, something that could never stand against Ryukiri. But before he was going to fall, a blaze lit up inside his heart, leading him to keep moving forward. It was that blaze that brought color to his life. With a drop of water, he saw that Shizuku had been hugging him, telling him that although he didn't want him to fight Toa, she would never be the one to stop him from living the life he wanted. At the same time, everyone he'd ever helped was there to cheer him on. Shizuku told him he'd never be alone. Holding her medal up, Stella showed him she had still hung on to their promise. He continued pushing forward, wondering why he ever wavered. He had made a promise with Stella, and she told him to rise together to the top of knighthood. Inside the arena, Toa made her entrance along with Ikki. Just then, Alice came back with his own qualification medal, but En noticed that Ikki had been completely beaten up and looked like he was starving. Even so, Toa apologized that he'd been wounded without care, but told him she couldn't hold her excitement ever since the first time he saw him. She hadn't been able to stop thinking about their fated battle. Ikki felt the same way and promised he wouldn't bring shame to anyone supporting him. Although all of them thought he was reckless, Stella knew this was part of his plan to cut her straight down. Toa knew he would jump straight at her, so if she dodged once, she would win, but she wasn't going to let him off that easily. Ikki knew he could get only one swing, so he didn't need an entire minute. In an instant, all color vanished and he began pushing forward. In that moment, the match was over, with Ikki as the winner. Outside the arena, Sword Eater was glad to hear the news. Ikki's win hit Azza harder than how clapped his face was. The god of war said Toa definitely didn't hold back. Ikki had increased his own limits in the last second. The director said his ability couldn't beat Ryukiri alone, so he put all of himself into just one swing instead of a minute. To the god of war, this was an extreme beyond extreme, a demon among men, so En decided to call it a man-eating demon. On the field, Ikki resisted collapsing with all his power because there was something he needed to say. Just then, Stella was trying to run, and as Azza was about to slash Ikki, Stella cast him back into the Shadow Realm where his useless ass belonged. When she finally arrived to look at Ikki, he began walking towards her, but when his sword vanished, she hugged him to stop him from falling, telling him he did a good job. He apologized for making her worry, but she told him she was the one who was stupid, because even though he was like this, she loved him anyway. As she hugged him, he realized this was the warmth that had saved him all this time. Shizuku received the ultimate cooking of all time. Meanwhile, Ikki's father received a call from the Emperor of Vermillion, screaming at him to prevent their kids from getting involved in adult schemes and saying this is what any good parent would want for their children. Ikki didn't respond. At the qualification ceremony, two ugly twins qualified along with Alice, the vice president, Stella, and finally, Ikki. Those 6 would be the representatives of Hagen Academy at the Seven Swords Festival. Toa announced the year's group leader, revealing it was Ikki. When he wondered why he was the one selected, the entire audience said he was their leader while everyone chanted his name.